Good afternoon, friends, and welcome to this episode number 13 now of YMCast. It's great to be able to share with you this week. And so, as we always do with YMCast, we start ourselves in prayer. Heavenly Lord, thank you that we can meet in this way, that we are able to meet in this virtual environment as we get closer and closer to hopefully churches being able to reopen. May we know your love and know your guidance, that we are able to do the right thing, that we are able to be healthy and safe, and know that we will eventually be able to meet again, be able to share in the worship of your risen Son. Amen. So before lockdown, me and Jill Flowers, our minister, used to meet every Monday at midday or so, and we would go and have lunch together. And we called these meetings our Dreaming Dreams meetings, because these meetings were where me and Jill were able to sit down. We planned out our weeks ahead, but we were able to have conversations regarding where we wanted the church to be, what we kind of wanted the church to do, and we were able to kind of think big and dream very, very big. Always me and Jill, we'd have our drinks in front of each other. Jill with green tea, me with a caramel latte. And we would share in this our conversations. And for the first time this week, we socially distanced met each other and had our dreaming dreams again. Admittedly, there was no green tea or caramel lattes involved this week, but I hope that might change in the future. Jill shared with me the following video, and I thought that we would share it with you. Something to perhaps just chuckle about today. Hope that was able to bring a smile to your face today. Now, some of you might know that this week Methodist Conference has been meeting, Methodist Conference being the governing body of the Methodist Church. It's met in a virtual form this year, using Zoom, being very, very tech savvy for Methodism. And a friend of mine wrote a reflection on this, and I used their reflection as a bit of a basis for something of my own, and I've called it "And See Each Other's Face." Dyed in the Wool Methodists will recognise this title as the second line of Charles Wesley's hymn "And Are We Yet Alive," which you can find in Singing the Faith number 456. This song is sung at the opening of Methodist Conference every year, and so was sung on Saturday this year. I stood in my dining room to sing. Others stood in kitchens, offices, and living rooms all across the British Isles and beyond as well. For the first time since its inception in 1744, the conference met not physically but online. It was strange and poignant, particularly that second line, when we can't see each other's faces, at least very few of them. But somehow there was that sense of connection that is so unique to British Methodists, that we have our own unique way of spelling it even. We consider ourselves to be a connection with a X. Methodist computers have been trained to accept this spelling, and I should say about the amount of times that I have to write things that have connection in, and my Word gets very angry at me. The conference has 306 voting members, along with other non-voting representatives from partner churches around the world and ecumenical partners here in Britain. Many others, including myself, joined with the conference via YouTube for what is called the opening of the representative session, which is normally attended by about 1,000 or so people. In this, the outgoing president of the conference, the Reverend Dr. Barbara Glasson, and the vice president, Professor Clive Marsh, handed over, at a social distance, to the new president, the Reverend Richard Teal, and the vice president, Carolyn Lawrence, via a video link from Cliff College, where a very small, physically distanced group formed the core of the proceedings. This year, the conference was supposed to be meeting in Telford, a new venue for the conference, I may add. So a friend of mine took to renaming her dining room Telford for the duration of the conference. Spent many hours in there over the last couple of days, working through the much reduced but very large agenda. For those of you that were interested, Saturday's proceedings and much of what happened afterwards from the last couple of days can be found on YouTube at the Methodist Church page. On Saturday, I find myself quite moved by those momentous relative events taking place in my own home and hundreds of homes across the country. Somehow, it felt somewhat akin to the coming of Jesus to a humble manger in Bethlehem, but perhaps I am getting a little carried away. The hymn goes on to say, "What troubles have we seen? What conflicts have we passed? Fightings without and fears within, since we assembled last." For many, these past few months would have made those words some very hard to frame. The conference this year dealt with a considerable amount of business, ranging from the finance of the Methodist Church to the theology behind performing exorcisms, and received what are called notices of motion. These come from members of the conference who want to bring to the attention of the conference various issues. This year, these included ethical investments and ecumenical matters, as Father Ted would put it. The hymn continues, "But out of all the Lord has brought us by his love, and still he does his help afford, and hides our life above." There is, I think, some comfort in that, and in the life of so many loved ones hidden above as such. Conference is usually a time for encounter, conversation, catching up, and even a little bit of Methodist gossip. This year, that took place in countless online messaging groups, where we can ask each other which page of the agenda we should be on, or what the current business means. For those of you that are on Twitter, if you see and use the hashtag MethodistConf, you'll see a lot of conference survival kits containing notebooks, pens, highlighters, post-it notes, and of course those all-important sweets that get us through these long days at conference. There was even a couple of particularly specialised items, including a conference-style puzzle book and a conference bingo that was being played. The phrase "you've muted your mic" was coming up a lot at this year's conference. Using Zoom, of course, means that it's been a steep learning curve for an awful lot of people. All was well, and conference ended today, Wednesday the 1st of July, with the singing of Captain of Israel's Hosting Guide, a song in which we pledge our confidence in the God who is faithful, whatever the wilderness in which we find ourselves. It has been strange to watch the proceedings of conference this year, to listen to the debate, still done in the spirit of conference, but obviously strangely done over this Zoom in this tech way that we have. But it's good that the church is able to meet, that we are able to move with the times, and that we are becoming a lot more tech savvy than perhaps we once were. The conference is hopeful to meet in Birmingham next year in a physical presence. I would encourage you to pray for Richard and for Carolyn as their president and vice president year starts, not in a way that perhaps they would have expected, not in the way that I think any of us would have expected, but they're the leaders of the church, and they have helped guide us through this most curious of times at the moment. They have a blog which you can follow, and I'd really recommend it as well. There is as well, I don't know if many of you may have come across it, but on Spotify, there is something called the Methodist Podcast, which talks all about all things Methodist. I'd really recommend that. That's a really great podcast and a really good thing to hear a little bit more of what's happening as well in the Methodist Church all around the world. So thank you very much for engaging with us this week, for meeting and listening to this podcast. It's great to be able to share with you. As always, if you would like to get in touch, please use the hashtag YMCcast. Always great to hear from people what they're doing at the moment in lockdown. So I hope you're well, stay safe, and have a good week. Cheerio.